and welcome to Exploring the Natural World. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'd like to talk to all the bird photographers out there and encourage you not to be overly concerned about always trying to photograph your subject's full frame. This is something I see often when I'm judging photo competitions and with the workshops I teach for the Massachusetts Audubon and other groups. For today's video, I'll be once again joined by my good friend Mike Milicia, who you've seen on other videos here on Exploring the Natural World. Mike and I have taught together for many bird photography workshops and seminars in the past, including for Hunt's Photo and the Massachusetts Audubon Society locally here in the Boston area. Mike is truly an amazing wildlife photographer and a really gifted bird photographer on top of that, and I encourage you to check out his website, which you can find the link below. So click on that link. I think you're really going to be impressed with Mike's work if you haven't seen it, as well as the photos you're going to see here today from both Mike and I. Anyway, Mike and I recorded this video as part of a virtual event, and I thought this particular section on photographing birds small in the frame would be a good topic for exploring the natural world. So if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Plus, if you have a comment or a question, you can leave that below. And I'm pretty good about responding to any questions, so leave any questions you got and I'll be sure to answer those as quickly as possible. Also be sure to stick around to the end of the video to see more photos from Mike and I, which I think you'll enjoy seeing. So let's have a look at some examples of photographing birds small in the frame and how you can improve your bird photography. Talk about experimenting with small in the frame subjects, and this is something that I think Mike and I both try to do when we have a subject that kind of lends itself to that type of photo at the moment. Although I will say it's something I don't see a lot of photographers necessarily doing as much as I think they should consider doing. And you'll see some of the bullet points here that we'd like to just point out in terms of it adds diversity to your portfolio, and that's something I think a lot of photographers could use, and it increases the sense of place, and that's just to kind of get a sense of the subject in its environment. And these smaller subjects in the frame, and you'll see some of the examples in a minute, I think are really going to drive that home. And it showcases attractive environments and backgrounds, again, opportunities to include the habitat, which we were just discussing. So again, just something to keep in mind in terms of subjects that are small in the frame. So if you look historically, and we've included again some Audubon prints, John James Audubon prints, and you'll see here, again, just some examples. The birds in the environment, this bay-breasted warbler here, one of my favorite warblers, by the way, and by including the habitat, by including the fact that the birds are smaller in the frame, it works quite well, right? So here's just some examples, again, historically. And if you look here at this black-capped chickadee, right, it's not huge in the frame, but it tells a nice story. It's in the spring. This tree is starting to bud out, and it just works quite well in terms of the composition. And the fact that the bird is small in the frame, it just works really well. Similarly here with this European golden plover that I photographed in Iceland. Mike travels to Iceland quite a bit, and I'll tell you one of the things about traveling to Iceland is when you get into certain locations, it's as if the stars have aligned perfectly, and you have this nice scene that's kind of unfolding in front of you with the moss and the grasses and the rock and the bird. And the fact that it's small in the frame, it works all together really well to tell this story, whereas if it was, a much closer kind of cropped photo, you just wouldn't have the same impact. And similarly here with this black-shouldered kite from Tanzania, I could have, thrown on a teleconverter and had it a lot tighter on the bird, and that would have worked well in its own right. But again, kind of showing a little bit more of this branch, which I think works quite well. The subject kind of up in the upper left-hand corner here, the whole composition comes together quite well, and the bird's not huge in the frame, but it works.
Yeah, it's something I wanted to point out there, Sean, is that if you notice on a lot of these, it turns out, generally speaking, a lot of the time when you have them small like this, corners work really well.
Exactly.
And especially and what makes this is you've got that branch oriented the way it is, and to use that as the compositional element to help. Again, if it was just standing on a straight up stick and you stuck it up in the corner, it just wouldn't work well small in the frame. You need something else to fill in the frame with.
Yeah, it wouldn't work as well, and it just, that branch really kind of lends itself to that. And with this kingfisher, this belted kingfisher, this old tree stump, you know, that's as important a part of the photo, right, to tell what's going on here as the kingfisher, right? You've got the bird a little bit more in the upper left, the whole composition. Again, the bird's small in the frame, but to me this works, I think, well. And this bobolink, again, you know, in the spring here, sitting on top of this little shrub that's starting to sprout, the flowers, the grasses, the whole composition. It was very tight on the bobolink. I just don't think it would have the same impact by showing the bird in the habitat. And I'll just go back to, again, you know, if Audubon were to contact me, they would probably want a shot like this as opposed to something that's full frame. And this red-cheeked corn blue that we had in Tarangire National Park in Tanzania back in 2019, just a stunning looking little bird. And again, it's a small bird, and small in the frame works quite well. And this old tree stump that it's on kind of helps add to the composition and the whole overall feel and the expression of what's going on here. I just think it works. And I'll turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, some other examples of where this works. And again, this was at the Glacier Lagoon in southern Iceland. Just wanted to get, you know, there are these eiders floating amongst the icebergs. So I want to emphasize that and show the habitat as well. And again, I want to point out how oftentimes when you're doing stuff like this, the first thing to do is think about, does it make sense to put the subject in a corner? And a lot of times that does work. It's not always going to work. I'll show you some other examples as well. But generally think about whether a corner makes sense and which corners depending on the environment. The same thing here, you get, again, by going wider angle like this and by putting the bird smaller in the frame, you get more of a context. You know now that instead of just having a bird in the water, you know the bird is on a lake that's against a deciduous forest and there's a blue sky. It gives you more depth to the image, more layers to the image, just adds more to the sense of place. You feel like you're actually in the canoe looking at the birds rather than just, again, a tight shot of just the loons, which is all about the bird. This is more about the experience of the loon and the two chicks. In this case, for example, because of the way the perch is and the vegetation arching over and so forth, then I actually would have, I think, lost something by putting it in a corner. It made more sense to take advantage and incorporate the vegetation into the shot as well and put the bird more centered vertically. But still, again, almost, you know, sort of a third of the way from the right or left. But again, small in the frame. So this image to me is as much about the perch as it is about the bird. Another example here, piping plover. You know, it's people always want to get the chicks close enough, you know, to make them bigger in the frame, and it works really well sometimes, but sometimes it's nice. This kind of, to me, emphasizes how small they really are and kind of how fragile they really are. It gives you more of an idea of like sort of what their environment's like to just make it smaller in the frame. And again, way down in the corner is usually the best place to put those kind of subjects. Yep.
You made a good point here about, you know, how fragile they are, right? And yep. I think this really helps emphasize that, right? I don't think sometimes people can appreciate how tiny they are. And, yeah, and the fact that they are that tiny, it's any wonder that any of them actually are able to fledge and become an adult bird when you see them like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
Thanks. And then sometimes it's all about just trying to include more habitat, you know, I mean, just giving more context of this least bittern, like, you know, just peeking out from all of the reeds in the swamp there. Flight shots too, you know, again, it's more of a bird in the environment. Now you get much more of an idea of, you know, if you've been to, you probably recognize this immediately if you've been to Bosque del Apache, but again, it's nice to have those mountains in the background and the trees, something to anchor it, something gives you more of a sense of place rather than just have it be all about the bird.
And we encourage you, shoot small in the frame. Don't be afraid to do it. There's the challenge.
Yeah.
Throw the gauntlet down, Mike, right?
Yeah, it does help. I mean, you do need attractive environments, you do need attractive perches and so forth, but it's more like recognizing when it's going to work and then just taking advantage of it.
Thanks again for watching, and please remember to help protect wildlife and help protect wild places. Cheers. Now let's see a few more examples of photographing birds small in the frame.